Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I said this a few times already, and I will say it here because it makes sense in the context of this video. And that is, Russia, I think, played ball since 1991 until about 2023. I think in 2023, Russia realized that the partner's goal, or one of their goals, is to destroy them and subdue them, turn them into a vassal state. Russia is too big, too important, too strong to allow that to happen. Nevertheless, these guys are trying in Ukraine. And I think finally, Vladimir Putin, who said at one point last year, maybe in about November, he said that he would, the only advice that he would give to a younger Putin would be, don't trust the West. He felt duped, fooled by the West. He said, I was too naive. Now that tells you something. That means if someone feels cheated, he's gonna hold a grudge and he's gonna wait to smack you back. Now, this is not Romania, Albania, these kind of countries. This is a country that has tentacles all over the world. And I think in 2023, the Russians finally dropped the imbecilic partners word and they change it into enemies. And probably they informed the Americans, you know, you wanted to destroy us, we're clear about it. You want to pull a Gaddafi on Putin. You know what? We're going to show you what we can actually do to cause you harm. If you think in your disillusion that we can't and we are weak. So I think the Russians just activated their little cells here and there and started actively working against the Americans. In Africa, in the Middle East, you can see all that, in Europe, in Far East, in the East overall, in South America, in Central America, basically all over the place. And this brings me to today's article, which has to do with Africa, with the continent of Africa, where Russia, if you paid attention in 2023, a lot of activity Mr. Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, had in Africa. And Mr. Blinken was also active in Africa, trying to offer bigger bribes, okay, than the offers coming from Lavrov of cooperation and equal cooperation. The Russians were able to kick some French troops out of Africa as well, through some African friends, and the Americans are on the way out as well. Now, what's going on over here? Russia has troops in Africa too, and has mercenary troops as well. Central African Republic was attacked by some Sudanese people. And guess who fought alongside Central African Republic's army, military? The Russian army. So the Russian army helped Central African Republic from being, you know, harassed by some interests coming from Sudan. I have a map here and I have an article to show you what happened. So Russia is fighting in Africa. Russia is in a bad mood. I think the Russian bear woke up from its winter hibernation in a bad mood and very hungry. So be careful. Here is the article. This comes from Sputnik, and it is from 5 hours ago today on the 24th. Yeah, 2024, February 4th. Time passes like crazy. Central African Army, aided by Russian forces, repels Sudanese militant attack, reports. So, with the support of Russian forces, the army of the Central African Republic has repelled an attack by Sudanese militants near a mining site in the village of Mamoun in the Vakaga prefecture in northern Central African Republic, a local radio station, Longosongo, reported. So these guys tried to fight over resources. So where is Central African Republic, and where is Miss Sudan? Here they are. This is the continent of Africa. Sudan is this big country right here on south of Egypt. The Nile goes through it, and you have Central African Republic right here in kind of a purple rain, and Sudan. So somewhere here it occurred. The Sudanese militants tried to cause problems in Central African Republic, but the Russian military is there. So bad news from Al Capone. Let's read further. According to the reports, the CAR army, with assistance of Russian forces, managed to eliminate Mohammed Ali. Oh, Muhammad Ali? Is it alive? Cassius Clay? Nicknamed B13, not Alpha, Beta 13, one of the leaders of the coalition of Patriots for Change rebel group. And I'm quoting, the CAR armed forces and their Russian allies repelled an attack by armed bandits at a mining site in the village of Mamoun. End quote. The radio station said, and I'm quoting again, the place was the target of an attack by a group of bandits who came from Sudan. Later in the day, the Russian embassy in the Central African Republic confirmed reports that the country's army, backed by Russian support, had repelled an attack by militants from Sudan. All right, here is a picture with supporters of Russia. Presence of Russian military instructors is something CAR, Central African Republic, always wanted, Parliament Speaker says. In early 2018, Russia sent its first military instructors to the CAR at the request of the government. Well, that's how you do it in Syria, you American violators of international law. Okay? You're asked, invited by the legitimate government of that country. Okay? You just don't just burst in someone's house, you know. As of February 2022, a total of 1,135 Russian instructors, or just instructors, you think, were operating in the country, training military personnel of the CAR army. Moscow says Russian representatives were deployed in the CAR with the notification of the United Nations Security Council. All legal and beautiful, according to the international law. In late June 2023, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the work of Russian instructors in the CAR would continue. I bet. So, this is another place where the Russians are helping, and the issue is this. I was talking about a so-called national conscience. That's how we call it, at least in Romania. National conscience. That means history and historical events negative, especially, leave scars along the conscience of a nation during its history. Therefore, for instance, the Romanians remember the Hungarians. The Romanians remember the Ottomans. The Romanians remember the Huns, remember the Tatars, remember the Poles, and so on. People, nations, tribes that came over and tried to cause harm on the territory of wherever the Romanians were stationed. So when you talk about the Hungarians, obviously you have an animosity against them. The same with, why? Not personal. You're a nice, good person, I'm okay. But I'm guaranteeing you that both sides have the guard up a little bit. So the same with the Turks. You don't forget that the Turks tried to subdue you, and they did for a while. They had you as a vassal states, and so on. So you don't forget these kind of things. Therefore, in Africa, the African countries still remember the Soviet support against some European countries who were still colonizing the country. So they remember the Soviets as the liberators or friends versus the guys who were oppressing them. The same thing with India. That is why India is hard to crack by the Americans and the Europeans, because India remembers it in its national conscious when the West, the democratic free West, was helping a military dictatorship in Pakistan against them, who were democratic country. So they remember that kind of things. And therefore the Soviets were helping India. So as Narendra Modi said, the president, and what's his name, Dr. Jay Shankar, the foreign minister of India, which I like very much, he said, we can't forget this. And he said it in an interview. We can't forget that the Soviets, Russians, he said, helped us when the other side was helping Pakistan. And we can't forget that. And well, it's be like a stab in the back. I know these guys here. I used to this kind of, I help you here. It's not my interest. I stab you and I take your money. But some countries still, function, really function according to norms and values that they, say they have, but they also act upon those. Now, it's hard. It's really hard to stay in accordance to your values under pressure. So that's why, for instance, here, Russians are in many countries in Africa, and they are viewed as the good people. Now, and for the other guys, even with their money and the bribes that they gave to some bad dudes in charge of some countries in Africa, the population knew who is who and what is what. Therefore, they don't forget. The Americans could, at one point on this planet, maybe since, I don't know, let's say 40s, 50s, until, let's say, 2015, 2000, they were able to outbid anybody with the bribes. I'm sorry, with aid. I'm sorry. Just a Freudian slip of the tongue. But then another guy showed up with more money. Can you guess who that is? Exactly, China. China has more money than the United States of America because China is not a bankrupt country. The other one is. And therefore, whenever the Americans are coming and say, we're going to give you 20 million in aid, China comes and say, we're going to go give you 40 million in aid and investments. Again, China doesn't have a bad aura or a bad history with Africa whatsoever. So they start from almost zero. America is deep down there in a big hole that it dug for itself. It's hard to come back, and it can't provide aid. It can't even compete with the money anymore. China has more money. So if the Americans can print how much they want, the other guys really have money. So here is, my friends, you're gonna hear more of these things from Africa, where I think the Russian friendship with some African countries will be challenged by the free world. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.